There's a critical number that determines whether hiring another provider actually grows your practice or costs you money. I call it the 60% rule, and here's what happens when you skip it. I had a client who hired another provider specifically to work on the days in her practice where she was working at another clinic, and it made sense on paper. More appointments, more revenues, and less reliance on her actually having to be there in the treatment room. But here's what happened. By the time she paid for the pharmaceutical, the consumables, plus now the cost of labor, she was barely breaking even. And in some cases, she was actually losing money on treatments. And the problem wasn't necessarily the hire, it's just that her profit margins weren't ready yet. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to calculate yours so that you don't make the same mistake. I'm Chelsea, I'm a CPA for med spas and other private medical practices, and now I'm going to give you the specifics behind that story that I just told you. So in this case, this client had a membership model for neurotoxin, and what she charged was $10.50 per unit for those members. So we took an average of 40 units, which is what she on average provided in her treatments. So then that comes out to about $420 that she's generating in revenue on these clients. And this membership was built to really build that loyalty and retain those clients. But here's the deal with memberships is they need to be a good deal for both your client and yourself. And they were not a good deal for her bottom line. So here's the calculation that tells the real story. We want to calculate your gross profit margin, okay? And this is where the 60% rule comes in. We want to be pricing so that you're generating 60% gross profit margin. So we're going to take the total of what you charge for a service and then subtract out all of your direct cost. So your pharmaceuticals, your consumables, your labor, anything used to provide that service. And that's going to leave us with our gross profit. And then we'll divide that by the price that we charge to come up with our gross profit margin, which is just a percentage. And we want that to be at 60%. At 60%, we're charging enough to cover our overheads plus to leave us a profit. If we're less than that, we're going to run into trouble supporting the rest of our practice. So let's break down the cost of this $420 neurotoxin treatment. So the pharmaceutical alone was $673 per unit. So we've got that plus some other small supplies, came out to around $274. And then she had 15 minutes of labor. So she was doing 15-minute appointments here at $65 an hour. And so what we came up with is a cost over $290 on a service of $420, which leaves us with a gross profit margin of 31%. At 31%, this service is generating revenue, but not profit. A membership program is ideal. I love it. It supports that retention strategy, but we need to make sure that we're pricing appropriately so we're still hitting that 60%. Now, before we go any further, if your books aren't set up to help give you these numbers, that's the first thing you're going to want to fix. Now, I do have a DIY bookkeeping cheat sheet that I built specifically for my med spas, HRT, and other wellness and medical practices. And I have a chart of accounts in there designed for exactly how you do business. So go grab that if you need it. But stay with me here because now we've gone through an example of when a margin is too thin. Let's look at one where we actually hit that 60% rule. Okay, in this example, my client took the time to really map out all of her labor costs that she included in this treatment package. For this one, we're going to look at a real life HRT treatment package, and it was priced at $42.99, so $4,299. Okay, so when we ran the numbers, we looked at the labor, and she had total labor of 555 minutes at $65 an hour, which comes out to $601.25 in labor. Then she had hormones and other consumables of about $877. So total cost came out to $1,478.25. This gave us a gross profit margin of $2,820.75 on that $4,299 treatment, which comes out to 65.6%. So she cleared that 60% rule. So after delivering this full package to a client, she's going to have enough left over to cover her overheads and still leave her a nice profit. The difference between this and the injectable isn't necessarily the type of treatment, but actually what it was strategically priced to do. $4,299 sounds like a big number, but it's not the price that matters here. It's the profit that's left over after you deliver that service. Okay, so now we've got two examples down. Stay with me here because I want to give you one more on functional medicine. I love this example because this is a really established client and I love how her offer is built. Now, her marketing is really dialed in. She has a steady stream of patients coming in, but it's not a volume game here. It's how she's built her offer. She's not selling a one-off treatment like a one-off tox treatment or injectable treatment. She is selling a 16-week transformation, and that's the distinction for selling high-ticket services. Okay, so her program is priced at $6,900. All in on labor, she's at 800 minutes at that $65 an hour mark. So that puts us at $864.50 in labor. Then she's got lab costs and consumables that come out to $1,206. Total direct cost of $2,070.50. So remember, she charges $6,900. So that leaves a gross profit of $4,829.50, which is 70%. This is why I love transformation-based offers. It is not easy for a client to price shop and compare your service to another service. That client is investing in an outcome and they're willing to pay a higher price for it. At 70%, this clinician can definitely afford to hire another nurse practitioner to provide these services and still have plenty of room left over to cover her overheads and still generate a profit. So the difference between that 31% one-off tox treatment and that 70% full functional medicine treatment package isn't luck, it's strategy. It's building an offer based on transformation and really evaluating all of the costs involved and pricing accordingly. You have control over all of this, and you can structure things well before you ever hire another provider. Here's your quick win for today. I want you to run this calculation on your top 3 treatments. I want you to look at what you price it, and then look at all of the costs involved and look at your gross profit margin. If it's at 60%, that helps support a hire. If not, you've got some restructuring to do before you start thinking about that decision. Taking the time to look now costs you nothing. Finding out after you've already hired is really expensive. In the next video, I'm talking about the misconception that trips up most practice owners who make it through the margin check. A new part-time provider could generate up to $290,000 in revenue or more, but most don't make it even close to that, and it's not because they're not good at what they do.